Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for another episode of Between Two Flags. I am your host, Mike Nash, the Executive Director of Impact to Hero, and we are here today in the Post-Traumatic Growth Library. I'm here with my friend, Jay Shaw, a Marine Corps veteran, and we are going to have a great conversation today about personal growth. Jay is not only a Marine Corps veteran, but since he's left the Marine Corps, he has had a successful career in real estate. He is the CEO of a what's the word I'm looking for? A brokerage firm. So he's the CEO of Cullen Realty Group, which is a brokerage firm, and we both live here in Houston. So I'm looking forward to talking to you today about personal growth. Glad to have you.
Thanks, Mike. Awesome to be here.
So we've known each other for a few years now, and once we found that we had this connection with personal growth and professional development, I think that's when we became close friends. Can you tell me and our friends now, where did your passion for personal growth come from?
That's a great question. So passion came from a different place. Personal growth came as a concept, and I didn't know that I really had a passion for personal growth until I had some really hard challenges. The passion was from a really early age. I used to read a lot of surfing magazines, and I would envision traveling around the world to exotic destinations. That translated into joining the Marine Corps. It's a long story. And I did get to travel around the world, and I did get to do a lot of exciting, adventurous things. And so I formed sort of a paradigm that I wanted to fit a lot of adventure into my life, a lot of life into life. I've always said, I want to fit a lot of life into life. Once I got wounded in Iraq and was going through that process of healing, I had to really wonder, was I going to be able to continue adventures? Was I going to heal to the point to where I could do the things that I love to do, surf, rock climb, create art, and others? And there was a time when I literally couldn't move the fingers of my right hand. I couldn't really walk around. I had a lot of issues, musculoskeletal issues, nerve damage, and of course post-traumatic stress going on. So
let's talk a little bit more about that. So you had been in the Marine Corps for how long before you went to...
About 7 years.
So it's about 7 years in, you had your deployment to Iraq. You'd already had a couple of deployments before this, but this was the Battle of Fallujah, where you were injured by a couple of enemy hand grenades, I understand, right?
Right.
And what was the extent of your injuries? Because you said this is what you felt was a barrier for you living your life.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the first grenade was the worst, and it broke my arm, broke my leg, broke all the toes on one foot, basically Swiss cheese my arms and legs. And the second one more or less just peppered my backside as I was crawling out the door.
Okay.
I didn't even know that even happened, Frank. I was like, it went off, and it was just sort of in the periphery because I was just trying to get out of there.
And because I know you, I know that before this happened, you were a rock climbing instructor, so you already were incredibly fit and very active, loved the outdoors. Were you a surfer at this time as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so you already had, in addition to being
I was
a
stationed
warrior
in Southern California, so I could literally surf, climb, and snowboard or ski in the same day because the mountains and the beach, everything was so close. And in fact, my buddies and I joked when I was a rock climber instructor, we joked around about setting up our own adventure race where we would pack in as many little adventures as we could in a single day. So yeah, I'm sitting there in the hospital with this arm that doesn't work and these legs that are perforated and this foot that's swollen and broken, pins in my toes, really wondering. And at one point I asked the doctor, I said, hey, am I going to be able to use this hand again? And he sort of brushed me off, like, you'll be fine, son, don't worry about it. And
So no yes, no, just kind of avoided the answer.
Right. Well, okay. My mindset at the time was like, bullshit. I grabbed his arm and I looked him in the eye. I said, am I going to be able to use my hand again? Because if not, you may as well cut it off. I want something useful, even if it's metal. I don't want...
Yeah, I guess you'd probably rather have a hook if you're as a rock climber than, a hand that didn't work.
Absolutely. So he took me a little more seriously that time. And the next day, an occupational therapist showed up and started putting me through some exercises. And I remember the day that I could touch these two fingers together was like this massive accomplishment. I was so excited. It was a big win,
just the thumb to pinky, huh?
Just yelling through the house, I touched my fingers together. So that was sort of the point where the personal growth became that. Because up until that time, the concept of self-development, personal growth was, I didn't really resonate that much with it, because I was this, sergeant of Marines. I had my purpose. I had my job. I was proficient. And the Marine Corps had given me all the development that I felt I needed to do my job.
Yeah. So maybe before being injured, your personal and professional development was probably physical, as, hey, I'm going to run faster or do more pull-ups, or more professional development of being able to be a better leader of Marines. There was no passion for reading or seminars or anything.
Again, I didn't see it as passion. It was about adventure. I got to go to schools. The Marine Corps sent me to American Search and Rescue Institute. I got to experience and learn a lot of things. So I was developing and learning about either being an infantryman or being a mountaineer, etc. When I was wounded and having to face a life where I couldn't do those things, suddenly all that development and conditioning didn't mean much anymore.
Okay.
So now what was I going to do?
Well, now what did you do?
That's where the personal growth really started, because now it was up to me. Like, what is my program going to be? I don't have the Marine Corps anymore to tell me what to develop and how to get stronger and all this good stuff. What am I going to do? And because I had been exposed a little bit to some personal growth seminars prior to getting wounded, one of the first things I did was I returned back to the place where I first did a fire walking seminar. And in this seminar, we didn't just walk on fire. We actually started with a lesson from a good friend and mentor of mine named John Mazel. He's a businessman, and he's a life coach, and he's just a really powerful guy. And he put us through a board break exercise. We broke arrows, we bent steel, and all the while the fire is being prepared out he's got about 3 acres of land. And then when we walked out to do the fire walk... Did
you know you were going to be walking on fire when you first showed up?
I did, and as a Sergeant of Marines, healthy, the first time, it was no big deal. I just saw other people do it, and I thought, well, of course I can do this.
They can do it, I can do it.
Yeah,
sure.
So I mean, it was a powerful experience, but it wasn't nearly as powerful as the second time when I'm, sort of felt like I was a shadow of my former self, and I had nerve damage to the point to where walking across nice St. Augustine grass felt like gravel and sticks.
Wow.
So now I'm limping to the fire. I'm no longer this Sergeant of Marines in the prime of my life. I'm this sort of broken, very, very weak feeling mentally and physically, and I'm limping out to the fire, wondering if I'm going to be able to or even should attempt it. And I was kind of waiting for a moment of decision and clarity, and I got that moment, and I walked across the fire and walked off of it. I didn't limp off of it. And that moment was a very pivotal moment, because it made me realize, wow, okay, my mind was limping. I didn't need to be limping, right?
So psychosomatic, or at least
Absolutely.
a good portion of it.
A good portion of it was psychosomatic. Now, of course, if I had just, gone to the mall and stood on my feet for hours and hours or something like that, I would have a legitimate limp from pain.
Sure.
But I realized that a lot of my limping was because I had pain that was recovering, and I was getting better. And so the trick was, all right, my mind was lying to me a little bit. What does that mean? And how do I need to pay attention to grow up here so that I can recover and get back to those adventures that I wanted, right? Because I wanted to have a really fruitful life, even in spite of being wounded, in spite of having to get out of the Marine Corps. And then I started seeking out more personal growth, more personal development.
And you got that from walking off of that fire. Because I read these things. As a matter of fact, in David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me, he finished his third round of buds with broken legs. It's like incredible. And then you hear these stories about these adventure races and what he's able to do and the way he pushes his body. And he says the same thing, where it's like your brain is lying to you, because it just wants to relax. It doesn't want the pain, but your body is capable of so much more. So here you experienced this long before, reading all of these books. You had your own experience of it.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, talking about the brain and adventure and firewalking, if you've ever stood at the precipice of a long drop, a cliff or a building, your mind and your body, there's a very visceral reaction to that potentiality of falling. Mm-hmm. Your body and your mind try to keep you safe. Mm-hmm. When you're standing there looking at a path or a circle of red hot coals, your body and your mind is trying to keep you safe and not let you step onto this bed of coals. Mm-hmm. Unlike jumping off a building, which has very serious consequences, you can take that step on a firewalk and get across safely, and now you've broken through a pattern, a program that says you can't do this. This is going to hurt. Mm-hmm. Don't do this. This is going to injure you. Don't do this. This is crazy. Don't do this. This is scary. And you just take that step, and then multiple steps, and then you're like, oh my gosh, not only am I not hurt, not only am I not burned, I'm actually elated, and there's this celebration. So there's a lot of lessons that come out of that. And it really set me on a path of recovering, not just physically, but seeking out ways and tools and books to read and seminars to attend to get not just good, but get as good as I could, as fast as I could, and get back to doing the things that I love to do. So that was my initial passion and purpose, and the way that personal growth journey started.
That's an awesome answer. We've had multiple conversations where I've talked to you, or I'm looking for some advice. I'm in my head about something, or I've got a very fixed mindset on the way things are or how they should be. And you joke with me sometimes that I start shooting all over myself. There's something that you've told me before, and I want you to share with our audience about you and someone else had this kind of agreement that you were able to call somebody out in a very fun way fun to me, whenever they have that fixed mindset, or maybe they're talking about a false dichotomy or something. Can you, if you know what I'm talking about, can you share that story, please?
Yeah, my dad and I used to study limiting belief systems in each other and in ourselves, and we had a goal to eliminate limiting belief systems, mm-hmm. because we knew that it would limit us in business and in our lives. So we would have a lot of discussion about that, and when we would hear each other say a limiting belief, rather than being rude about it, we learned to just say, well, if you say so. Well,
not everybody understands what a limiting belief is. Can you give you an example, or maybe share with our audience what we're talking about here?
Sure. A lot of them start with things like, I can't because of X, Y, and Z. Well, Tony Robbins says failure is not a lack of resources, it's a lack of resourcefulness. So a limiting belief could be just, well, I don't have the money to start a business. Well, you can go find the money.
And what was the phrase that you used with your dad?
If you say so.
If you say so.
So if you were to say to me, I don't have the money to start my business, I'd say, well, if you say so. It's kind of like if you get to be right about mm-hmm. your limits and your negative aspects, and you get to be right about your positive aspects and if you're unlimited. Okay.
So that was code between you and your father to kind of remind you, hey, you're speaking a limiting belief, and if you want to believe it, then fine. But it's kind of a challenge to, hey, let's maybe reframe that.
Sure, because you can put somebody on the defensive if you say, I don't have the money to start my business. Yeah, but there's all these programs. As soon as you say, yeah, but, and now we're in an argument, and now you're going to defend your limiting belief system against my counterpoints, and now it's just driving it deeper and deeper into your psyche. Now you're defending your own bullshit story.
Right, okay. That makes sense.
So we would just say, if you say so, which now sets you back on your heels, and you go, what did I just say? Is that really true? Is what I just said really true? And it makes you evaluate your words, how your self-talk is presenting itself.
I love that. I know we're both fathers. My kids are a little bit older than your son, but I've use that without saying the if you say so, but I ask them to reframe these ideas when I hear them speak a limiting belief. Like, I'm not good at math. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. Let's reframe that. Let's talk through that. And my daughter is especially good at saying, well, math isn't my favorite subject, but I'm working really hard to get better at it or to become even better. And I'm like, I love that.
That's solid gold, right? Because if you say I'm not good at math, then why even try? That was a paradigm I had during high school. I don't know where I got it from, but somewhere along the line, I got this idea, limiting belief, that I was not good at math. And so guess what? For over 2 decades, I wasn't good at math. In fact, I sucked at math. What I didn't realize was I actually did math in the Marine Corps. I did land navigation. I did call for artillery fire. Mm-hmm. Those both require math, but it wasn't framed as math. It was framed as those military skills. And then when I finally got around to doing college algebra to get my associate's degree, it was absolute hell. But at the end of that class, my brain had adapted. I realized that I did have the ability to do math. I actually came out of that with a B. I even got I remember like it was yesterday, the first time the teacher handing me a test that didn't say F. Right. Wow. Okay. I passed an algebra test. And then I remember the first one she gave me that said A on it. And those are the things that shift your paradigm. Mm-hmm. But if you continue to say, well, I can't, or I'm not good at, or whatever, then that's going to continue to be the truth. And a lot of people, I'll tell you this, a common limiting belief system that I hear all the time. Oh, I'm not good at remembering names. I'm not good at remembering names.
I've probably spoken that limiting belief.
I used to say it all the time. And I don't know I'll just give credit to my first broker, Al Fox. I think he's the one that, because he's a Marine veteran, Korean War era. And I think he said something to me like, well, you better get better in this business or something like that. You know, he just cut to the chase. Like, if you're not good at remembering names in real estate, that's a problem. And I thought, oh man, so I did a little studying on it, and I found some techniques and started practicing these techniques. Mm-hmm. The first thing I did was stop saying I'm bad at remembering names. And do you know that was 50% of the problem?
Absolutely.
When I stopped saying I'm bad at remembering names and making that lame excuse at networking events and parties, I instantly got better at remembering names. And then with just a couple of little simple tips that I learned from studying that subject on the internet or whatever, that was the 80%.
And all of that information is available to us, at a Google search.
There's no excuse to be bad at remembering names.
I had a limiting belief for a couple of decades myself that I always said that I was no good at running, that I was not just I wasn't good at it, but I hated it. So after having our conversations and learning about limiting beliefs, I recognized that my body is responding to these hundreds, if not thousands of times that I said, I hate running and I suck at running, that when I start running, my subconscious mind is like, what are you doing this? You don't like to do this. You hate this. And therefore, it was that much more miserable, as opposed to starting running and saying things that are, positive affirmations, or that empower me, that, I'm lean, I'm strong, I'm healthy, I feel good, or something along those lines, as almost like as a cadence. And I find myself, wow, I don't hate running. It's just I wasn't good at it in the beginning, and I use that as an excuse, and before you know it, I'm, 20 years in to hating running just because I told myself that.
It's so pervasive. I hear people espousing limiting belief systems all the time. Excuse me. And when you learn how to identify a limiting belief system, and then you learn that you can just shift that by making a decision to stop saying that and stop believing that, it's incredibly simple but so powerful. I love having that knowledge. That's one of the biggest personal growth tips that I ever got.
I say first awareness, then change.
Yeah,
got to become aware first.
Absolutely. Well,
that actually kind of leads us into the next point that I wanted to move into, is coaching others. So you have made a successful transition from military life to civilian life, and business seems to be going well, but you constantly are giving back to help others, especially veterans or budding entrepreneurs, people that might be interested in getting involved in real estate. It seems like you have a real passion for giving back and helping others. Did that come maybe from being an infantry squad leader, or is there somewhere else that came from, or why do you think you have this desire to help others and to give back so much?
Yeah, so coaching is an interesting journey as well. I found that when I was in the Marine Corps, I really enjoyed the leadership aspects of getting to teach classes. I got to teach lots of different, what we call hip pocket classes. So when there's board moments during training or combat, we were told as squad leaders and team leaders to have a hip pocket class ready to go. And then I got to be an instructor for the rock climbing school, assault climbers course. And in that course, we taught legitimate classes of, multiple hours of instruction on a podium with a board. And that was a good experience. And I really found that I enjoyed teaching, to the point that I would say that was like my dream job, was being a rock climbing instructor and being a teacher, because adventure and teaching Marines to do something that I really was passionate about. Transitioning to the civilian world, I wasn't good at anything at first, but I found that over time, young realtors would come to me with questions about real estate. How do I get more leads? How do I close more sales? When I was doing real estate investing, I would have people like, oh, you own rental properties? Well, doesn't that mean people like trash your houses and you have to unstop toilets at night? I'm like, do I look like I unstop toilets at night? Like, really? So I would have these moments where I could break myths, teach people, help them with little quick tips on how to improve their business or improve their wealth building strategies. And then I started like, oh, I remember this feeling. I used to teach. This is teaching. It's a new skill set. And so now I've come to the point where I really am in an organized fashion, coaching and teaching these new skill sets of real estate investing, personal growth and development.
That's awesome. So here at Impact a Hero, our focus is post-traumatic growth. We're trying to help veterans overcome their struggles and their challenges with post-traumatic stress by teaching them these new skills. And a lot of it ties into the very same things that you're talking about. One of the things that we use is the This Is My Era Planner, and it talks a lot about goal setting. It breaks it down to where, you turn it into a SMART goal. They dummy proof it for you to fill in all the blanks, and then you backwards plan. How has goal setting made a big difference in your life in these last few years, whether it be with coaching or just in your own success?
Yeah, I love this. I use this. You turned me onto this, and I think this is a fantastic tool. And I've used a lot of different planners, both digital and hard copy. To answer your question, goals, everybody knows goals are important. For me, putting it down on paper forces me to go through the thought process of not just, I want this next new shiny thing, or I want that, or I want this, or I feel this way about that, I want this to change in my life. I feel that there's pressure points in life, both painful and positive. You got rewards and you've got consequences.
The carrot and the stick.
The carrot and the stick.
Yeah, dream and dread. Yeah.
And those are powerful forces, but without some written goals and a plan to achieve them, you're just sort of battered around by those forces, and you may or may not maximize your energy, your life force, and your time. So again, I like to pack a lot of life into life, and the way that I can pack a lot of stuff into life is putting it down on paper and going, okay, what do I really want to do, and in what time frame, and then back plan. And the Marine Corps teaches you to back plan. If you're going to attack this objective, you start there in your planning and you back plan to your assembly area. And I just applied that concept to goals, and then I've kind of pushed that concept further. I really like the discussion around the difference between dreams, goals, and tasks. I think a lot of people get wrapped around what really amounts to a task list or a to-do list, which is important. But honestly, I mean, if you're not focusing on your top 1 to 3 most important tasks, that's a recipe. If you got 10, 15 tasks, that's a recipe for one of these long days where you feel like you didn't accomplish anything, and then you get to the end of the month, the quarter, the year, and you haven't really accomplished your biggest, most important goals. And you haven't made progress towards your dreams. So I think it's important not just to focus on goals, but to think, okay, what are my dreams? What goals do I need to accomplish? What do I need to be, do, and have to experience that dream? And then last, what are the to-dos?
Right.
And not get so wound up in the little to-dos and the daily tasks. And another military analogy we used to say is, if we're all digging the trench towards the castle, somebody at some point has to pop their head up and make sure you're digging in the right direction.
Sure.
And these tools are ways of getting out of the minutia of your daily production, popping your head out of that fighting hole and looking around and being your own leader and saying, what is the direction that I'm going in? And what is my most important focal point? Knock that out first, and then just go on down the list.
Yeah, we've talked at length about prioritizing tasks and goals. I remember you even recommended the book, The One Thing, and I got so excited about it, I actually finished it before you did.
That's right.
It was funny. But we talk about that. We talk about, I think it's the Eisenhower method of task management. You know, is what we're talking about, is it urgent or is it important? Right. And, you know, the little quad chart for urgent and important, and where you place those things on how to do things. But I find myself all the time, you know, doing whatever is urgent as opposed to doing what's important. So
and you can teach that to your family members, your kids, your employees, your business partners. Mm-hmm. You can say, look, here's the way we can look at our activities and make sure that we're actually spending the most time on the urgent and important. Mm-hmm. And then really you want to get to the point where you're just focusing on important, because urgent is where all the stress is.
Yeah. We use the other book, I think it's The Eating Frogs. Is that
Eat Your Frogs.
Tracy book maybe? And he's talking about...
I think it's a Mark Twain quote. I think it's from Mark Twain. I'll have to look that back up. But yeah, he talks about...
Yeah, eat the frog first.
Yeah.
And after that...
Get up in the morning, eat your frogs. Stuff.
Yeah. So I had just a couple more questions for you. One, I mentioned that you have a son. Your son's name is Logan. How old is he now? 4? Yeah. Such a fun age. My kids being 10 and 12, we're having, when they grow up, type conversations all the time. But as a veteran of the Army, I was actually an Army recruiter for a while. There was all these thoughts about what if my kids want to join the Army or join the service. And I think in most cases, absolutely. And I thought maybe I might even be upset if for some reason they didn't want to. Have you given some thought out of everything that you've been through, being in the Battle of Fallujah, getting wounded, the things that you've been through? What if Logan comes to you and he wants to join the Corps, or maybe what if he wants to join a different branch? Maybe wants to be in the Air Force or Coast Guard. How would you feel about those conversations?
That's a great question. My best friend in the Marine Corps, he's got a couple of kids, and he decided right off the bat he did not want them to go into the military. And he retired out of the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. And I sort of had the opposite. I was questioning him on that, like, why wouldn't you want your son to go in the Marine Corps? I would love it if my son decided to serve his country, and if he chose to go into the Marine Corps, of course, certainly I would be proud. If he chose to, if he asked me for advice, I'm not sure I would. I'm like, you're a smart kid. Maybe you ought to look at your options, right?
Okay.
Your dad was kind of a special kind of crazy and just wanted to go have adventures. So, and I give a lot of coaching and advice to people who are thinking about joining the military, mm-hmm. and I just I was just, like I said, a little bit crazy. That's why I went in the Marine Corps, but. Logan, if he wants to serve, I would support it. And that's good. Yeah, it would be kind of scary though. I'll admit it. I mean,
I can't imagine what I put my parents through whenever I wanted to join. But I know I have that thought all the time, and I just wondered, what another dad might think. And then kind of a fun question here at the end. I got stuck into my 1-year deployment turned into 15 months. So I was in Iraq for a very long time, and man, I was so excited to come home. I know yours might got cut a little short of 15 months, especially getting wounded. But what did you miss the most when it came to food? Like, was there something that you just had to have when you got home? What was the thing that you were craving the most?
Dr. Pepper. I had this happen in boot camp, and I had it on deployment two times. I was doing something mundane, and an instant extreme craving for a cold, crisp Dr. Pepper hit me. It's just those simple.
So now we're looking for sponsors. So if Dr. Pepper, if you want to sponsor us, we will.
10, 2, and 4. Yeah. Well, sorry, Dr. Pepper. I don't drink a lot of sodas these days. Too much sugar. But no, that was the one craving. And honestly, like the thing that I enjoyed most getting back to the States was the feeling of being in America.
Yeah.
And for anybody, whether it's travel or military deployment, if you've been out of the United States of America for any length of time, like a week or more, you know the feeling I'm talking about when you come back here and you get this appreciation for America and what we have. We got a pretty good thing going.
Well, it's even better in Texas.
Damn right.
Awesome. Well, Jay, thank you so much for the interview. I'm absolutely going to have you back. This Between Two Flags idea I think is just going to grow. What we want to do is we want to help empower and inspire veterans, and we have a couple of different ways that we do that. For those people who are local to Houston, we have a Toastmasters group that I know you're very involved with, and that is helping veterans tell their story in a way that inspires and encourages others. Love to do that. There's also an opportunity if somebody wants to connect with you through social media. I know you have your own coaching page. Would you tell us a little quick about that and how they can find you? Absolutely.
Balance Achievements is the company. You can find Balance Achievements on Instagram and Facebook. Balanceachievements.net is the website. And we've got a lot of great content on there. We do some seminars throughout the year, and we have opportunities for people to get one-on-one coaching.
That's awesome. Well, I know they would definitely benefit from that. So that's going to wrap it up for this show. Thank you so much for being here, and thank all of you for joining us. And I just want to remind you that post-traumatic growth is a choice, and I hope that you will choose growth. Thanks a lot. Bye.